been wanting to have you in front of us for quite some time. I appreciate the full length of your presentation, though I mostly have questions regarding competency and mental health cases that come in front of you. But before I go to those questions, maybe my easier one was just on this last one. So you go into this expungement process as soon as someone comes in front of you for any new charge, and then you identify that they have previous charges, and that's how you start identifying expungement?
Not really. No, we're not waiting.
Oh, so you're doing research on literally
totally
everybody.
Proactive
Wow.
on every single case. Yeah.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you. I appreciate that. So you talked about the potentially 12 folks who I would characterize as, just had a conversation with Jamie, as familiar faces who are coming into the court system that have charges brought against them for trespassing, for vandalism, and may also have some sort of mental health situation happening. And then I'm hearing you say, which is really helpful because I did not know, that it is then you refer someone to district court and then it's in their jurisdiction. I did not know that. That could have solved many heartache conversations, to be honest with you. So once that has been determined, what options are at the court's disposal, whether it's you or whether it's district court right now?
Oh, Jamie and I have tried to talk about this too. And right now, when somebody's found incompetent, my option, dismiss, release. That's it.
And what about district court?
What about
district court options? Like, do they have any more options?
The district court does have a mental health, what is it? What's AOT?
Assisted outpatient treatment, but it's not automatic.
Right, okay, assisted outpatient treatment. It's voluntary, right? Oh, it's civil, okay. So, yeah, they do have it's a treatment court basically for people with mental health challenges, behavioral health challenges. They don't currently accept misdemeanor defendants, which is all I have. So I don't have options, but we're trying to fill that gap.
Right.
Let me mention that New Mexico is with the majority of states that when somebody's found not competent, if it's a felony, if it's a violent felony especially, the district court will order the person to be what's called treated to competency. You try to get them competent enough to stand trial. If that doesn't happen, they can face that amount of time that the conviction would hold in the state hospital. But you also have to understand our state hospital in Las Vegas has a very limited number of beds. Of course, everybody in the state's trying to get those beds, and it makes sense that they're for violent felons. So nobody tries to treat people to competency for misdemeanors.
Okay.
And that's almost nationwide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I also appreciate you talking about the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
And some of the things you mentioned are first time I'm hearing of them, right? And I'm wondering what can you do to take back to that group? Because right now council is saying we want to work on options. We want to increase the options that are available for folks who are vulnerable, who keep, unfortunately, I mean, Chief can tell you how quickly property crime has increased, and I've said this before. It's not just about a broken window. It's not just about a cash register. It's about people's peace of mind, right? That is not something we can just magically make go away. And so this keeps happening. Many times I'm assuming some of the same folks, right? And so right now we have a council that's saying we really want to come up with some options.
Right.
At what point, I would like also like for you or for this continuum to come to us and say, these are some ideas that we have, because this is priority for us right now.
Sure. The SIMS task force, we're not just working, we're trying to come up with a solution for the entire county. And I think that is where the solution lies for filling the gaps, all the gaps, identifying them, and trying to fill them. I want to just sort of veer off for a second and correct a misconception. I know that Sarah Smith and Juan Garcia and many others are very concerned about the property crime at businesses, and so, as am I, but when I get criminal damage to property charges, it is almost never a vandalism of a business. I can't remember the last time I saw one. When I get criminal damage to property citations, and it's rare, it's almost always ex-romantic partners. One of them throws a brick at the other's windshield or throws a brick or a rock through the window. That's what I see. I'm not getting these things where people do things
That's
on
interesting.
businesses.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
and
not
so
get-
are you-
Now, they may be filed in magistrate court,
That's what I was gonna
magistrate
ask you.
court. But I think it's really hard because what I primarily see are shoplifting and trespass, and it's easier for law enforcement to catch those people, right? They're generally witnesses who see them because they often trespass over and over again at the same place where they've gotten a trespass card. So it's much easier to catch those people and cite them. It's very hard to catch the people, I think, that are doing the vandalism to the businesses.
Sure.
You know, maybe
And so,
cameras
Judge,
will help.
So if those folks are caught, let's say, the officer determines where to file that case?
Yes, they can file it in city court or state court, correct.
And so they would go to magistrate court, is what you're saying?
Some of them may, but I'd be pretty surprised if they were getting a lot of criminal damage to business properties for the same reason. It's just much more difficult, I think, to cite people for that.
Okay. Okay, I may have more questions later. Oh, no, I do have more questions. Just one more. What specialty courts do we have right now in Doña Ana County?
The magistrate court has a DWI drug court, and they let me participate in it for a while, and I did. It's a good program. One problem we had is the statute, the amount of time to resolve a misdemeanor in magistrate court is 18 months, or I'm sorry, the maximum probation is 18 months, and in city court it's 1 year from beginning to end. So that's a limitation. And then it was just also a little difficult when they met because that court, it meets for several hours. And then there's several in district court. There's a veterans treatment court. We sometimes refer people to that. There's the outpatient treatment. What am I missing? They also have drug court at district court for felonies.
Judge, is there a model where municipal court would have specialty courts?
Oh, sure.
What would be needed for that?
Well, you have to really have a prosecutor, and this is something I was going to talk about later in my presentation, but a prosecutor and like a single defense attorney and a court. And that's it. And the director of Community of Hope's already opened her conference room to us. It's got Wi-Fi. We could use it once, twice a month. I would probably need the support of the council, of the city attorney's office.
I would love to see a proposal. I met with Judge Arrieta a while ago, and he mentioned to me that drug court is significantly less expensive than putting someone in jail. Jail is very expensive for taxpayers.
Right.
And I would love to see a proposal on what a specialty court could look like for Las Cruces, and if that's coming from you or from legal, whoever, I would be very open to having that discussion, because I think those are the kind of spaces that we are missing for some of the folks who are like familiar faces of the criminal justice system. I may have more questions later, but that's it for me right now, Mayor.
I think I may cover an awful lot of what you're asking me about if you'll let me continue and just jot down your questions.
Well,
if you don't
Judge,
mind.
I don't know how much longer you have, but we kind of need to speed up what it is you requested. But Councilor Beta has a question, I have a question. You opened yourself up here to allow us to ask you some comments, so I think we'd like to do that. Yes.
How much longer is your presentation as well?
I really only have one other thing to talk about, major thing. Do you want me to come back and do it another time? I think
I
it's
do.
the really important part of my presentation. but-
I do have a couple questions then that I'd like to ask.
Yeah, I think, Judge, it's important that us ask these questions because you're going to come in with an ask, and if we don't have this information, this basic
Sure.
information down, I think that's going to cloud our, at least my opinion of what your ask will be.
Yeah, Councilor Bencomo, I just wanted to say we're billed by the county for our people that are in jail. It's about $102 a day. Treatment courts, less than $30 a day, but sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge, for your presentation so far. You had said that the time between kind of entering the system and exiting that whole process is around 182 days for resolution for most cases?
Correct.
Okay. And with that, what is usually the reason for that day? Does that look pretty average for a court system, especially like New Mexico? How has you seen that time frame during your tenure?
We haven't really had difficulty meeting it. Is that your question?
Well, I'm wondering, for efficiency's sake, and I know everybody wants to see resolution when things happen, and if a crime does occur, I'm sure it's, peace of mind for those that have been affected on either side, that these things are done with that efficient manner. And so I'm curious on where we range as far as, does this look like a good time? Have you been able to kind of become more efficient with that process? What does that look like when you have the use of alternative judges? Does that help alleviate time frame? And now we have an alternate judge as well. And so I'm curious to see if that's all working together to make a more efficient system.
We don't have any trouble meeting the 182 days, other than that period of the first 15 months where we were doing things virtually and people who were demanding in-person trials.
What do you say is the average?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, if you look at the life cycle of a case, most cases settle at pretrial hearing, and that is usually within maybe the 2 months of arraignment. And so that's a plea bargain, basically. And the person knows what they're getting, the prosecutor knows what they're getting, nobody gets 100%, but they get certainty. And there's a lot of benefits to settling at pretrial, and we generally do.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then the next question is to follow up with that of use of alternates versus use of your other judge. How is that going so far? What does that caseload look like to see, that process?
To my knowledge, Judge Streeter's planning to resign. I thought it was going to be because she was going back to district court, but when we had the conversations, she said, I really want to be home with my kids. She has a 3-month-old infant and 3 other children, and I totally understand it, but she also has very fixed times during the day, 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, when she has to pump breast milk, and that is just not conducive with the schedule we set up for hearings. It takes her about 30 minutes, and she said it's absolutely inflexible. So I'm just covering everything for now.
Ma'am, that seems like an HR issue.
A what? An HR issue?
Yes, Counselor.
I mean, so I had set up a
I'm going to move
schedule-
on to a different line of questioning.
Okay.
Thank you. With that in mind, what modernization have you taken during your tenure for changes with the municipal court, including perhaps computer systems that might be needed?
I would say probably the best thing is, after conversation with the director of the Doñana County Detention Center, we started sending out texts to defendants to remind them of their hearings and due dates for payments. It costs us 20 cents per text, but we've only been doing it for about 6 months, so we don't really have the data. And the other problem is, like, homeless folks often don't have a phone.
Okay. Regarding the building, obviously, we saw some statewide issues that had significant security, not only with any elected officials, things like that. May you talk about the security that you have within the facility, any changes that have been made, including things like parking lot structures?
Well, we always have a security guard in the courtroom with anybody who is hearing cases in the courtroom, and we have a security guard at the door. Occasionally, the firm that provides them will provide additional guards if we request them.
The use of cameras?
I'm sorry?
The use of cameras within the system, if you have them around the parking lot structure. I knew that they were there in the past, that the city has paid for that.
We have some cameras that are in the parking lot. We're looking into getting them.
I was told that there were some. Are they not there anymore?
No, they are in the parking lot, but not where people come into the building or the sides of the building, and we're a little concerned about that.
Okay. And then also, with a follow-up for a question about specialty courts, I'm curious, if we were to look into that, would we need to make adjustments to our ordinance? It does have here under section 17-32, section A, that the